Hey, we're gonna hear from Nebbish. This again is another coaching video. My last 4 TvPs I lost, so be gentle. And the reason Nick has been losing TvPs of the 3 that I've watched, all comes down to not enough early Marines. So the way TvP works is Marines are the best unit in the entire world against Protoss until Protoss gets AoE. So the idea is to just massively favor Marines in the early game, to get a reactor core on this first Rax immediately, which the Protoss is delaying. That's kind of cute. And then make sure this Rax is never idle. Always have Marines coming out of it. And then your second Rax's job is to make a tech lab and get Marine upgrades and make a couple of Marauders so that he can't just keep kiting you forever, but mostly producing Marines after you start your later tech. Then Terran has trouble keeping up on production if they emphasize a mineral heavy unit like Marines after they have about 18 workers on minerals. So your goal is to stick with this one geyser and get up to about 18 dudes mining minerals, and then make a second geyser and pull the next few SCVs onto that second geyser, so that you're constantly getting as much mineral income as you can. And you only really get gas because if you didn't get gas, you would max out on production. Like these 8 mineral patches can only support 20 dudes, 22 dudes, I think. So you want to have as many guys mining minerals as possible all the time, but eventually you're going to max out, and then you need this second gas. So Nick gets this second gas way too early every time, and that reduces his mineral income, and that in turn reduces the size of his army. So I know we haven't been watching his army size, but I want to mention some other things first. Nick sent an SCV, found the dude's base, ran away, and so Nick right now knows where the dude's base is, but that's all he knows. You're supposed to send your first Marine to scout again, try to kill a probe and see what else is there. And when that should have happened, the dude had a zealot, which is pretty common, but the Marine walks at the same speed as the zealot, so it wouldn't have died to the zealot. You would have seen 3 gateways. Wait, no, 2 gateways. Yeah, no, 3 gateways and a cybernetics core. So that would right there tell you he's not going for a fast expansion, and he's probably going to be hitting you early on with either a Robo or a Stargate, and that's cool. Not that that's super important information, but at least you'd know he wasn't DT teching, and you'd also know he wasn't quick teching to Psystorm or Charge or any of those things. Also, seeing the second gas is kind of neat. Nick does look around for proxy stuff, but he misses the one place where the proxy stuff actually is. And so when this attack comes, Nick's caught pretty much off guard, though he did have a bunker here in preparation. So spending benchmarks, 6 minutes you want 1,000, 7 minutes you want 1,500. You'll notice the Protoss is hitting these benchmarks. At 6 minutes he has 1,000, 7 minutes he has 1,500. Nick, however, is not hitting the benchmarks. 900 plus 2 plus 1 is 1,200, so missing the benchmarks. Plus, this upgrade isn't going to be done in time for the actual fight, so you really shouldn't even count it. So technically you have 1,000 versus 1,500. All early Protoss hits are counting on that, because Stalkers are a terrible unit, dollar for dollar in a straight-up fight, and Void are a terrible unit, dollar for dollar in a straight-up fight versus Marines. If you put them all on a unit tester on a wide-open map where no one could run away and no one could hide, actually, I suppose the Stalkers would kite. If you put them on a unit tester that's like a tiny island where no one can run away and no one can hide, Marines are just going to utterly dominate this whole composition. So this push is quite common from Protoss, and what it's relying on is that if he's across a divide from you, you can do a little bit of damage, but as soon as the shields of the nearest stalker gets to 0, he's just going to walk back and let those shields regenerate. So he gets to keep coming back to the edge of your map all day long, and you can never really stop him until you get a ranged unit like a siege tank or a Void Ray. And Nick built a lot of stuff near these edges. The way this map works, you kind of have to, because even this is within range of the edge. Although, really, this area right around here is the only vulnerable area, so you could theoretically just build all your buildings right here and be totally fine. But it's too late now. Nick didn't know what was going to happen before the game happened, so he did build tons of supply depots and bunkers and other stuff near the edge, and so he's got to defend it. Defending it is really easy with Mass Marine if you have your Marines stand in like a big line, and then Magic Box walk so that all of the Marines start shooting at the exact same time, and then walk back, and then walk in, and then walk back, and then walk in, and then walk back. Because the way Protoss micros this is, I'm going to do damage until my shields are 0, and then I'm going to back up. I'm going to do damage until my shields are 0, and then I'm going to back up. So the amount of time it takes you to get his shields to 0 is the amount of time he gets to do damage. So if you see how Nick's, the way Nick's engaging, only 2 of the Marines are going to shoot for a little while, and then a third one will eventually meander over to the side, and then a fourth, and then a fifth. That's giving the Protoss tons of time to do damage. So this whole harassment from him is mostly being effective because Nick put a bunch of buildings near the edge, and because the way he's engaging with his army is kind of poor. And also, but mostly, not even also, but mostly because his army is tiny. If you look, 9 minutes, the benchmark is $2,750, and Nick has 1,100. So this is just really, really tiny army. Most of that's because he's been supply blocked for a long time. But really, I mean, that is an excuse, and it's a good excuse, but if you want to know why you lost, 2,600 versus 1,100. Again, the Protoss is not ahead of benchmark. The Protoss is actually slightly behind benchmark, like $50 behind benchmark the whole game. So if Nick was right on benchmark, Nick's army would always be the same size as the Protoss's army. And because Marines are so good dollar for dollar against Stalker Void Ray, this wouldn't have been a problem whatsoever. You would have just laughed at this and been like, who goes Void Ray? Anyway, this is the stupidest build ever. But unfortunately, because Nick's army has always been very small, it makes these guys look powerful and intimidating, right? Every time I engage, I lose a bunch of stuff, and he loses nothing. This is very frustrating. But the reason that every time you engage, you lose a bunch of stuff and he loses nothing is because, like I said, he's going to stay until his shields are gone and then walk back. And if you engage with only the front 4 Marines, or no Marines, his health doesn't fall fast enough for him to be scared. So the range on Void Rays, I think, is 6, and the range on Stalkers is 6. The range on Marines is 5. So there's only one range in which he can kite. That means as long as you're engaging in a horizontal line or a vertical line so that all of your troops are hitting him at the same time, he's got practically no time at all where he gets to do damage without losing units. So you'll watch in normal TvPs with people who made enough Marines, this sort of harass just isn't effective at all, because Marines are awesome. So Nick is doing quite poorly, but he hasn't died. And once you get a siege tank, now it's 6 range trying to harass your 5 range. But you don't have 5 range anymore. You have 7 range and 9 range. So Nick's now basically saying anytime you try to engage, you're going to lose more than you gain. So it's no longer worthwhile for the Protoss to keep up this harass. So usually this kind of harass supply blocks you, and then he's supposed to move up your ramp and try to win, while his army is still big and you've been supply blocked for a little while. But the Protoss blew it. He's not being aggressive enough, and Nick's army right now could easily kill his army. When it was 1,000 versus 3,000, the Protoss could have won, but now Nick's kind of caught up, and the game's over. Nick wins. And the reason I say the game's over, Nick wins, is because Stalker Void Ray is a terrible composition against Marines, or against Marine plus other stuff. And Nick's going Marine plus other stuff, so once Nick gets down his ramp, he's going to just up and win this game. So right here is the precursor, the foreshadowing of the end. The Protoss lost a bunch of stuff, and now he's behind. But I mean, Nick said in his email or his explanation of these games, I won one game, but I feel like the only reason I won it is because he blew it and lost 2 Void Rays for no reason. And that was dumb for him to lose 2 Void Rays right there, but he lost this game already by not winning before Nick's army size caught up. Because if that same battle had happened right here, sure, he might have kept the Void Rays alive, but your concussive shells would have killed off enough Stalkers that you would have come out ahead in that engagement too, and then he would have had to fall back to something, right? And he's got nothing to fall back to. He could have fallen back to here, but then again, you're going to engage and you're just going to win that engagement hugely, or he could have fallen back to here and maybe he could force field and keep you off the high ground, but you would have killed all this stuff. So as soon as you got an army that was close to the same size as his army, you won this game. It's not like just because he microed poorly. Stalkers aren't good against Marine Siege Tank Marauder, especially with SCVs in front to tank. So, yeah, you got this pet down pat, and you're going to win this game. Anyway, same exact mistake this time as other times. I think again, you're sort of right that the Protoss should have won this game, but he should have won it at 9 minutes when he was way ahead. By the time at 11 minutes he made a big stupid mistake. It was too late. You'd won. So he had a good chance to finish you off when you were supply blocked forever, and yeah, that is all. So good job. I'm going to fast forward the mop up because that's all this really is a mop up. He hasn't teched to anything that can do damage to Marines, so he loses. Again, you'll notice if you look at army spending, he spent 7,000 and you spent 4,500. He spent ridiculous amounts more than you. He had 2 bases mining for a long time. He made a much bigger army than you, and he's going to lose. Why? Because Marines are crazy good against every unit he decided to make, and you made a heavy Marine composition. And this is the problem that you're having in the early game, is that the reason you won wasn't because of the medevacs, wasn't because of the siege tanks, wasn't because of the Vikings. It's hard to, I mean, it's easy to lose track of that fact, because when you're fighting, the Marines handle themselves. You just A-move them, and then you focus on microing the Vikings and microing the medevacs and microing the siege tanks. And you should got to focus really well on positioning your siege tanks behind buildings so that the zealots can't get in range of them, and you got to make sure they're not shooting at immortals, and you gotta, you're paying attention to the unimportant units. So it's easy to forget that what's winning you the game is these Marines. So just keep that in mind, and you'll do a lot better in the early game, man. Marines are what this build is all about. It's all about Marines and nothing else. So make more Marines in the early game, man. Damn. I'm gonna go back to the beginning. Sorry, I mean, I know the point is already made and I shouldn't be harping on this, but I want to fast forward at 8x and just watch this Rax and just get an idea of how often it's idle, because honestly on one Rax with a reactor core you can make enough Marines to take over the universe. So let's just see when the problems came up. Right there when you built the bunker is a problem, obviously. Right here it's only building one dude. Right here is a problem as well. And that's when you built the factory. Like, you notice these problems are happening. And this, you have too much gas. You've got 300 gas, and the thing is idle, and you're fighting, and the thing is idle. So it was idle for probably 30 or 40% of the time that it was up. Maybe even half. Look, it's idle now too, but that's the supply block. So yeah, it's all about the Marines, baby. It's all about the Marines. Going on to the last game.